The blade had been dancing for 19 years without losing its edge. In the heart of the royal kitchen, where most cooks burned through knives monthly like firewood, one man moved differently, as if he wasn't cutting meat at all, but conducting an invisible orchestra. The prince had seen warriors, scholars, and masters of every craft, yet none moved with such effortless precision as this humble cook carving an ox. What the prince was about to learn would shatter everything he believed about power, control, and mastery itself. Check right now if you're already subscribed to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching this video from. It was a chaotic afternoon when the prince first stepped into that royal kitchen. He'd come seeking distraction from the weight of governing a restless kingdom, decisions that drained him, conflicts that never seemed to end, problems that demanded constant force and control. But what he found stopped him cold in the doorway. There, in the middle of steam and noise and clanging metal, stood a man so still he seemed to exist in a different dimension. The cook faced a massive ox carcass with nothing but an old knife and an expression of absolute peace. And when that blade finally moved, it wasn't like cutting at all. It was like watching water find its way downstream, effortless and inevitable. The prince didn't know it yet, but this moment would transform not just how he ruled his kingdom, but how he understood the very nature of existence itself. The royal kitchen erupted in chaos that afternoon. Metal clanging, servants shouting orders, steam hissing from enormous pots. In the middle of this storm stood the cook, silent and centered, facing a massive ox carcass. The prince watched from the doorway, arms crossed, his mind heavy with the burden of governing a restless kingdom. He'd come seeking distraction, maybe a moment of peace, but what he found instead stopped him cold. The cook's knife moved like water finding its way downstream. There was no hacking, no grinding of bone against steel, just fluid motion, almost musical. Each cut seemed to happen before the blade even touched flesh, as if the ox itself was revealing where to part. The prince had witnessed royal swordsmen train for decades, yet their movements looked forced compared to this. Something about the scene didn't make sense. Mastery was supposed to look difficult, earned through sweat and strain. He stepped closer, curiosity overriding protocol. "I've seen artisans of every kind," the prince said, his voice cutting through the kitchen noise, "but I've never seen someone work like you do. Tell me, how long have you been using that blade?" The cook paused, wiped his hands on his apron, and lifted the knife into the light. Its edge gleamed impossibly sharp, not a nick or dent visible. 19 years, my lord," he replied with a slight bow. The prince's eyes widened. His own soldiers replaced their weapons yearly. The kingdom's craftsmen wore through tools like autumn leaves falling. 19 years. Impossible. Other cooks here change their knives every month. What sorcery keeps yours so sharp? The cook smiled, not with pride, but with the quiet knowing of someone who discovered a secret hidden in plain sight. His answer would challenge everything the prince thought he knew about effort, force, and the nature of true mastery. The cook set down his blade and gestured toward the ox. "When I first began this work, my lord, I saw what everyone sees, a massive, solid obstacle. The whole ox, nothing but dense meat and impenetrable bone. I attacked it like a warrior storms a fortress, using strength and determination." He traced his finger along the carcass's outline. "I went through knives faster than anyone. My hands ached. My spirit grew heavy. I was fighting the very thing I was supposed to be serving. But something shifted after 3 years," he continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "I stopped seeing with my eyes alone. The ox stopped being a single impossible thing. I began to perceive the spaces between, the natural hollows, the pathways that were already there, waiting." The prince leaned in, fascinated. This wasn't about cooking anymore. The cook was describing a way of encountering reality itself, a philosophy hidden inside a practical skill. "Now, when I approach my work, I don't see flesh or bone at all. My eyes rest, my spirit takes over. I feel the architecture of the animal, where it wants to separate, where nature has already created the openings. It's like reading a language written in silence. The cook picked up his knife again, positioning it against a joint. Watch, I'm not cutting through anything. I'm following a path that's invisible to those who rely only on sight and force. The blade slid between bone and cartilage as if through empty air, making a sound like wind through silk. The prince felt something stir in his chest, recognition. He'd spent years forcing solutions to problems in his kingdom, pushing against resistance with more laws, more control, more effort. What if there were hidden openings in those conflicts too? What if he'd been trying to cut through bone when he could have been finding the spaces between? The question hung in the air, unanswered but alive. "There's no thickness to this blade," the cook said, holding the knife up so light passed through its razor edge. "And in every joint, no matter how tight it appears, there's space. When something without thickness enters where there's space, there's freedom, complete freedom of movement. That's why after 19 years, this knife still cuts like it was forged yesterday." He handed it to the prince, who tested its weight, astonished by how light it felt. The prince turned the knife over in his hands, mesmerized. "But how do you find these spaces? Surely some parts of the ox resist. Some joints must be tighter than others." The cook nodded, retrieving the blade and returning to his work. "Absolutely, and that's where most people fail. They feel resistance and immediately respond with greater force. They push, they grind, they exhaust themselves and their tools fighting what won't yield. I do the opposite," the cook explained, his movements demonstrating his words. "When I encounter a difficult knot, a complex junction of tendon and bone, I don't attack it. I slow down. I feel for the natural opening, even if it's invisible at first. There's always a path through, always a path of least resistance if you're patient enough to find it." His blade met a particularly tough section, and instead of forcing through, he paused, adjusted his angle, and let the knife find its own way. The joint separated cleanly, effortlessly. The prince watched transfixed. How many problems in his kingdom had he approached like a battering ram against a castle gate? How many conflicts had he made worse by applying more pressure, more rules, more rigid control? The cook's philosophy wasn't about weakness or avoidance. It was about profound understanding. It was about working with reality instead of against it. "Wu Wei," the prince murmured, remembering ancient texts he dismissed as impractical poetry. The cook smiled, recognizing the term for what it truly meant: action through non-action, power through receptivity. The cook's rhythm continued, smooth and unbroken, until suddenly his hands stilled. He'd reached a section where multiple bones converged, wrapped in thick tendons, a genuine challenge even for him. The prince expected him to simply power through, to prove his mastery with a decisive stroke. Instead, the cook did something unexpected. He stepped back, took a slow breath, and let his shoulders drop. The kitchen chaos continued around them, but he seemed to exist in a pocket of calm. "Even after all these years," the cook said quietly, "I still encounter knots that demand respect. Joints so complex they could ruin this blade in a heartbeat if I approached them carelessly. This is where most cooks fail, my lord. They've built momentum, they're confident, and they barrel forward." He approached the difficult section again, but his movements had changed entirely. Each motion became deliberate, almost ceremonial. His focus sharpened to a laser point. The knife touched the knot with the gentleness of a feather landing on water. The cook didn't push or pull. He listened with his hands, feeling for the whisper of space hidden within the tangle. His breathing slowed further. Time seemed to stretch. Then, with a movement so subtle the prince almost missed it, the cook shifted the blade a fraction of an inch. The entire knot separated like soil crumbling from an ancient artifact. It fell away in one piece, leaving clean edges behind. "That," the cook said, carefully wiping his blade, "is the heart of living in harmony with the Tao. When you meet genuine difficulty, you don't escalate, you refine.
you become more present, more attentive, more delicate. The prince felt something crack open inside his understanding. All his life he'd believed that greater challenges required greater force, but what he just witnessed proved the opposite. The hardest moments demanded the softest touch, the clearest mind, the most patient heart. And there was more to learn. The final cut completed, the cook set down his knife and stood back from the perfectly divided ox. Every piece lay arranged with geometric precision, not a scrap wasted, not a single bone marred by unnecessary force. He moved to a basin of clean water and began washing the blade with the same reverence a monk might clean a sacred text. The steel sang softly as he dried it, then wrapped it carefully in cloth before placing it in its wooden case. His face showed no exhaustion. Instead, a deep satisfaction radiated from him. The prince found himself unable to look away from this simple ritual. There was something profoundly moving about the care the cook showed for his tool, the gratitude implicit in each gesture. "You're not tired," the prince observed, almost to himself. "I've watched men finish far simpler tasks and collapse in exhaustion, yet you've carved an entire ox, and you look fulfilled." The cook turned to him, and for the first time the prince saw not a servant, but a teacher, someone who'd mastered what all the kingdom's philosophers only wrote about. "When you move with the Tao, my lord, work doesn't deplete you, it completes you. I'm not fighting against my task, I'm dancing with it. Every cut is a conversation, every challenge an invitation to deeper awareness. By the end, I'm not diminished, I'm more whole than when I started." The cook's words landed in the prince's mind like stones dropped into still water, creating ripples that spread outward into every area of his thinking: governance, relationships, even the weight he carried in his own heart. "I came here today thinking I'd watch a cook prepare meat, but what you've taught me has nothing to do with cooking, does it?" The cook's smile was gentle but knowing. "The Tao doesn't live in temples or sacred texts, my lord. It lives in the blade, in the washing of dishes, in the conscious drawing of breath. Every moment is an opportunity to practice effortless action. Every challenge is a chance to find the space instead of forcing through the resistance." The prince bowed deeply, not the perfunctory nod of nobility to servant, but the genuine bow of student to master. When he straightened, something had shifted in his eyes. The weight he'd carried for years seemed lighter somehow. He'd entered this kitchen seeking distraction and found transformation instead. As he turned toward the door, the cook returned to his work, humming softly, a man at peace with his craft, his blade, and his place in the great flow of things. The lesson had been given. What the prince would do with it was now his own journey to walk. So that's the story of the cook and the prince. But here's the real question. Where in your life are you the prince at the beginning of this story? Where are you using force when you should be finding space? Think about it. Really think about it. Are you grinding through your days, burning through your energy like those cooks who replace their knives every month? Or have you started discovering your own version of the cook's blade? That effortless flow where work becomes meditation and challenges become invitations? Drop a comment right now and tell me, what's one situation where you've been pushing too hard instead of looking for the natural opening? Maybe it's a relationship that feels stuck. Maybe it's a project at work that's draining you. Maybe it's something deeper, something about how you're approaching your entire life. I want to hear your story, because your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And here's the thing. This channel exists to bring you these profound lessons every single day. Ancient wisdom that actually works in modern life. Taoist principles that can transform how you work, love, and exist in this chaotic world. But we need your help to reach 1,000 subscribers so we can keep growing this community of seekers and practitioners. Hit that subscribe button right now. Smash that notification bell, because tomorrow, I'm sharing another story that will challenge everything you think you know about success, effort, and the art of living. The cook's wisdom is just the beginning. Your journey to mastery Real, effortless, soul-aligned mastery starts the moment you decide to stop fighting and start flowing. And if you want to dive deeper into Taoist wisdom right now, check out the complete playlist I'm leaving on your screen. Each story will transform how you see life, work, and the art of effortless living. Don't miss what comes next.